From the headquarters of Tell Us Your English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. We start in Colombia, where presidential candidates Gustavo Petro and Iván Duque are set to contest in the second round of the election. In Sunday's vote, right-wing candidate Iván Duque of the Democratic Center Party took the lead with over 39% of the votes. He was closely followed by the left-wing candidate Gustavo Petro of the Colombia Humana Party with 25% of the vote. This was the first presidential election that took place after the peace accords with the FARC was signed, a historic deal that ended 50 years of internal armed conflict. The implementation of the peace process, the improvement of the domestic economy, and universal education are the main topics in Duque's and Petro's agenda. The second round of the election will be on June 17th. This presidential election saw the largest voter turnout in 20 years, with almost 20 million exercising their democratic right out of 36 million registered voters. This represents a participation rate of over 53%. According to the Colombian National Civil Registry, the outcome contrasted with the high abstention seen during the last presidential election in 2014, that reached almost 60%. The conservative candidate Iván Duque called for all Colombians to remain united during this next election. Duque said if elected, he will represent all and pointed out the need for the country to address an agenda with clear proposals. The right-wing candidate said he wants to review parts of the peace agreement and that his main fight will be against corruption.
We don't want to tear apart the agreements. What we want is to make it clear that the Colombia of peace is the Colombia where peace is found with justice, that there is truth, there is reparation, that there is compliance with punishments. Social justice also requires concrete proposals, not empty speeches, not inciting class hatred, not stigmatizing the productive sectors. I want to say to Gustavo Petro that we are ready for the confrontation of ideas and proposals. We are ready to give Colombia a high-level debate.
Meanwhile, Gustavo Petro says he can overcome his contender during the second round and he will work to reach a victory. Petro, a former member of the M19 guerrilla group, achieved a milestone by becoming the first left-wing candidate to reach the second round. Polls have suggested the end of the conflict with the FARC has shifted voters' priorities from security issues to inequality and corruption. This opens the door for a left-wing candidate to reach office for the first time.
The free will of citizens seems to be with those who do not have a roof. We are moving forward with a firm, steady step, always moving forward. Be sure that we will have victory. The history of Colombia can be changed. We are going to talk about at the ballot boxes in 15 days, a return to violence or building peace. We have given it our all. We are not playing with fire so as to have a Colombia that is in peace.
We spoke with the independent journalist Richard McCall to see what this outcome potentially means for the peace process and for Colombia's future.
There's still hope. There's still hope for that the peace process can be carried out as it has been managed in the last couple of years. Gustavo Petro, of course, is a left-wing candidate. He's a socialist, which is quite unusual in this predominantly conservative country, I would say. At the same time, he says that he will see out and see through the peace process. So we've got an interesting month ahead of us until the second round on June 17th.
We also spoke with former Ecuadorian Foreign Minister Guillaume Long about President Juan Manuel Santos' announcement of Colombia becoming the first Latin American global partner in Leto simultaneously to the electoral process.
I think it's very sad news. I remember expressing my discomfort with the fact at the time when I was foreign minister to my colleague, María Ángel Holguín, who announced that they were observers of NATO. Colombia had become an observer state of NATO. I expressed my discomfort with that decision. And now that they've become full members, now that Colombia's become full member of NATO, I think it's very bad news. I mean, the idea was to have a security agreement within UNASUR. This is why we created the Consejo de Defensa of UNASUR, the Council, the Board of the Council of Defense of UNASUR, and to have a organization like NATO permeate the South American continent when we know what NATO means, basically a tool, a military tool of the United States, is obviously bad news for the construction of sovereignty. I mean, I've questioned NATO per se. I think it's an organization that belongs to the Cold War. It's been an organization that's been in the way of European sovereignty, for example, for Europe to have a sovereign foreign policy and defense policy. And that's in the case of Europe, a much stronger institution. Now, you can imagine what that would mean for UNASUR, which is still in kind of this slow process of being born. In fact, with facing a number of problems at the moment, with 6 countries that are partially withdrawing. Anyway, so NATO, Colombia being part of NATO, a major defeat for those of us who defend Latin American integration and Latin American sovereignty.
Despite the democratic process on Sunday, accusations of fraud continue to dog Colombia's electoral process. The Electoral Observer Mission registered at least 33 reports on the purchase and sale of votes and 24 reports, other reports on the delivery of electoral advertising material on Sunday morning. The electoral body said around 1,000 irregularities were reported in total.
A total of 627 anomalies and irregularities were reported, most of them related to purchases and sale of votes. 186 reports that point out the mobilization of voters in car, buses, or taxis who were given cash and goods. This phenomenon is particularly important as one of every 3 reports we got were related to it. We also got 31 reports on usurpation of voters' identity, so we think it is necessary to implement biometric identification in all Colombian departments. The third main issue was the use of electoral ads next to polling stations, which is forbidden by the law.
The irregularity reports were confirmed by the Immediate Reception Unit for Electoral Transparency, created by the state in 2013. The body reported 1,239 irregularities by 6:30 p.m. local time. The capital city of Bogota registered 179 reports. Medellin in the northern department of Antioquia, 124. In Barranquilla at the Atlántico department, 101. 99 reporters were registered at the Central Department of Cundinamarca and 91 in the city of Cali. At the Valle de Cauca Petros Party, Colombia's Humana reported pre-marked votes in favor of candidate Ivan Duque in different Colombian departments. The party also said Colombian police acted violently against Petros supporters in the southern city of Ipiales. Following the Colombian outcome, first congratulations have arrived from different leaders. Bolivian President Evo Morales congratulated the Colombian people and candidates Ivan Duque and Gustavo Petro for reaching the second round. Morales hoped for democracy and peace to succeed on June 17th. The French politician Jean-Luc Mélenchon tweeted congratulations to Petro and said peace, ecology and social progress will win on June 17th. Meanwhile, the Colombian Senator Iván Cepeda highlighted that the votes accumulated between Petro and the other 2 former candidates, Sergio Fajardo and Humberto de la Calle, would give a victory to the democratic and political change in Colombia. Cepeda said so far none of the former candidates have disclosed if they're giving support to either Petro or Duque. Sergio Fajardo thanked his 4,600,000 voters for their trust and said, quote, "We will have to take care of Colombia." The former candidate, Humberto de la Calle, also took to Twitter and said, "Let's make a perpetual oath to defend peace in Colombia. Thank you to everyone." The Paraguayan President Horacio Cartes resigned on Monday to take oath as senator on July 1st. The outgoing president sent his resignation letter to the National Congress, where he needs 23 votes for it to be accepted. Cartes needed to resign the presidency to be sworn in as senator. He has been president of Paraguay since 2013. Mario Abdo Benitez will become Paraguay's next president after being elected on April 22nd. We're turning to El Salvador now, where Hugo Martinez was elected as the presidential candidate of the Farabunte Multi-National Liberation Front, or the FMLN, for the upcoming 2019 election. Martinez was elected with 19,793 votes after the results were in. The now presidential candidate thanked his supporters, especially the war veterans who voted for him. 262 polling stations were set up throughout the country. Polls closed at 8 p.m. local time. We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
Opponents of the peace agreement in Colombia celebrated big victories in the March 11th congressional election. Some say this is due to widespread fraud, with the Electoral Observation Mission of Colombia reporting over 1,200 violations. Apparent vote buying was caught on camera. 20% of voting centers didn't have enough ballots. 30% say they were not allowed to vote privately. And voters across the country reported physical threats and violence against leftist candidates and supporters. The New York Times reported that when dozens of those paramilitary leaders were arrested, known for commanding widespread civilian massacres, disappearances, and forced displacements, Uribe extradited them to the U.S. so they could serve short sentences and evade accountability in Colombia. When the state-backed paramilitary network United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, which publicly declared trade unionists legitimate targets for assassination, was implicated for widespread massacres and torture, the Uribe administration ensured little or no jail time. Uribe himself enjoys presidential immunity for his proven role in multiple war crimes.
Welcome back. In Barbados, the new members of the cabinet and their parliamentary secretaries have been sworn in. Prime Minister Mia Mottley acknowledged that her cabinet is larger than normal, but says despite the country's economic situation, the cost of a few extra salaries won't compare to how much they will save from having a more efficient government. Mottley herself will be the Minister of Finance and would therefore be directly responsible for guiding Barbados out of their economic crisis.
That the cabinet of ministers will be relatively large because I've not only considered the mandate given to us by the people, but also the scope of the work to be done and the level of expertise that is at our disposal among elected members.
Mottley also proposed an amendment to the Constitution to allow the opposition party that received the highest number of votes in the election to recommend 2 appointments to the Senate so that their voice can still be heard in the Parliament.
We have discussed the need for an urgent amendment of the Constitution to allow the opposition political party securing the highest number of votes to recommend 2 appointments to the Senate, because we believe that even though there has been no official leader of the opposition, my government would wish to have accommodated the views of the main opposition party that secured the largest amount of votes. In this instance, we are effectively speaking about the Democratic Labour Party.
In Brazil, President Michel Temer announced a reduction on diesel prices to put an end to the truck drivers' strike that has paralyzed the country for more than a week. The cut equals to 10 cents per litre, although the price reduction will only last for about 60 days. Temer said he also agreed to further demands the truckers made to put an end to the strike. However, most of the truckers kept their vehicles parked and partially continued to block some roads on Monday. The Brazilian government deployed the military to clear barricades built by the strikers, and security forces have been escorting fuel trucks since Friday to supply refineries, airports, power plants, and medical facilities. Now, trucks move 60% of the goods that are transported in Brazil.
The first claim of truck drivers. The price of diesel will be reduced by 10 cents per liter, so that each trucker feels this effect exactly at the time they fill their tank. I want to express my full confidence, government confidence in the natural spirit of responsibility, solidarity, and patriotism of each of those truckers who serve our country.
In Chile, students will continue their protests at the Central University in the capital city, Santiago, against sexual abuse and harassment on campus. They made this decision after meeting with the head of the university to discuss a rape report of a young student by one of her professors. At least 15 Chilean universities have been mobilizing to put an end to what they consider to be rape culture that dominates the education institutions in the country. The country has witnessed large demonstrations during the last few months in a wave of feminist protests that have also spread globally. Bolivian President Evo Morales has accused right-wing sectors in Bolivia of attempting to disrupt his government. With more information, here's Freddy Morales, our correspondent in La Paz.
President Evo Morales has reported right-wing sectors are attempting to disrupt its government through lies and are trying to discredit his administration. He says that right-wing sectors are using lies to attack him. In 2002, when the president was a deputy, a lie campaign was unleashed against him to ban him from the legislative power. Now political opposition has raised a campaign against Morales' government after a student died at a demonstration at El Salto State University to demand a budget increase to the government. Autopsy has revealed that the student died from the impact of a marble. According to the government minister, Carlos Romero, the marble was fired by the students at the protest.
Still in Bolivia, the country is preparing to celebrate the Fiesta del Gran Poder, the biggest cultural celebration in the capital, La Paz. These festivities generate work for thousands of artisans and millions of dollars for local businesses.
This machine seals the seams of costumes that have been worked on for hours by local artisans, who every year innovate with designs and colors, leading to the high-quality embroidered costumes.
Those of us who get hired for El Gran Poder know it's worth it, because you have work secured for the whole year. These festivities extend all over La Paz, so we all want to be part of it.
The festivities are a celebration of El Señor de Gran Poder, an image of Christ which is revered as miraculous. The event has become a source of income for over 9,000 artisans.
There's some business between January and November, but during a celebration such as this, it explodes. You earn enough for the rest of the year.
They cost about $100. It comes with everything: boots, hat, underskirt, everything.
Renting a costume costs between $20 and $100. It depends on how many times it has been rented. The most expensive costume for sale is the Moreno. It's a dance that remembers the cruelty against slaves brought from Africa to the silver mines of Potosi.
It can cost up to $1,500. The price is rising. I do this every year upon request, and I do it how they want it.
Dance groups are organized in 74 ensembles that perform around 20 dances. Just one ensemble could have around 5,000 members.
We have around 40,000 dancers. The day starts at 7 a.m. and ends at 1 a.m. There are also 6,000 musicians. More than 80 bands accompany the ensembles, with up to 5,000 members.
The city of La Paz estimates that the Jesus de Gran Poder celebration generates around $150 million a year.
The indigenous people of the municipality of Charan in the center of the Mexican state of Michoacán elected new officials on Sunday. Over 5,000 Purepecha or Tarascanes people chose 12 members of their council for the third time. The community created its own council in 2011 because they were fed up of their municipal president and the policemen who worked along organized crime groups and gangs. They were eventually expelled from the community. Now, the indigenous group is self-managed and have achieved to establishing a democratic system of self-determination unique in Mexico and recognized by the state. The community also created a community police force of 79 persons.
The Charan model has innovated in many ways because it has come up with a way of choosing officials in a totally different format from the Mexican electoral system that has been around, at least, for the last 50 years.
Subtropical storm Alberto hit the western Cuban region of Artemisa. The storm swelled a nearby river and dumped up to 12 centimeters of rain in less than 8 hours, according to local media. Some families were evacuated, but the rain and flooding were quick to hit central regions of Cuba like Villa Clara, who were also affected. Subtropical storm Alberto is moving north through the Gulf of Mexico and is also threatening to bring heavy rains and winds to the southern U.S. coastal states. We'll take a short break now, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has been released from hospital in Ramallah after an 8-day stay. Hospital authorities said he received treatment for a lung infection. 82-year-old Abbas was admitted on May 20th for what doctors initially said were medical tests following ear surgery. He has been hospitalized 3 times in the last month and has suffered from various ailments in recent years. In a miraculous rescue, a migrant from Mali scaled a 4-story building to save a child in the French capital of Paris. Mamoudou Gassama was passing by when he saw a 4-year-old boy hanging from a balcony on the 4th floor. Within seconds, he climbed up and rescued the child. This video has gone viral on social media, and he has been widely praised for his heroic act. President Emmanuel Macron met him on Monday and has offered him citizenship. The political crisis in Italy is back. Here's more on that and other stories making headlines around the world.
Italy is back in political and constitutional turmoil after President Sergio Mattarella vetoed a candidate for finance minister proposed by the coalition of anti-establishment Five-Star Movement and the far-right Northern League. Citing concerns by investors, Mattarella said he couldn't appoint the Eurosceptic Paolo Savono to be the finance minister, and instead he appointed a stopgap prime minister. Analysts say chances of early elections are very high. After the announcement, there have been calls for the impeachment of the president. After a surprise meeting between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in at the border village of Panmunjom on Saturday to ensure the North Korean-US summit, Moon said that more impromptu talks between the two Koreas should take place. The unplanned meeting was called after US President Donald Trump abruptly cancelled the summit with Kim last week, but later said he is reconsidering it.
If we could hold working-level, back-to-back talks on both sides of Panmunjom, if urgently necessary in addition to formal summits, it will expedite faster advancement of inter-Korean relations.
In a rare move, New Zealand's government has ordered to kill more than 100,000 cows in an attempt to eradicate the cow disease Mycoplasma bovis. This would be the biggest mass animal slaughtered in the history of the country. Mycoplasma bovis manifests in the mastitis in cows, causes severe pneumonia and ear infections. After the culling, New Zealand will become the world's first country to eradicate the infectious disease.
Hundreds of environmentalists and volunteers have hit the beach of Lanma Island in Hong Kong to clean up after campaigners warned that plastic is killing sea turtles and other wildlife. There has been increasing concern over the amount of rubbish in Hong Kong's waters, which washes up on its numerous beaches. Campaigners say the most common cause of death of sea turtles in the area is due to the ingestion of trash. They're demanding the expansion of the restricted areas for turtles along the sea to increase their survival rate. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.